Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Poly Prep video podcast. This special series allows AP English literature students like myself to dive deeper into the world of poetry, analytically exploring all the unique aspects that make up a poem. I'm Melanie Macleod, a senior in Mr. Rearick's AP literature class, and I'm here to speak to you about a poem I recently found. When I was exploring poems, I was really intrigued by this Ted Hughes poem, Hawk Roosting. Ted Hughes was an English poet in the 20th century who began taking an interest in poetry at a young age. Interestingly enough, Hughes was married to Sylvia Plath, another prominent poet, for a number of years before she took her own life. Hughes was most known for the flatness of his poems in the way that he focuses on the natural world and animals rather than personal experiences or feelings. I've often taken interest in poems that offer realistic imagery of the wilderness and also focus on the natural behaviors of animals. I think that Hughes wrote about animals because they hold a natural simplicity that humans just do not. I chose this poem about the hawk, and now I'm going to read the poem and begin to discuss it further. Hawk Roosting by Ted Hughes. I sit in the top of the wood, my eyes closed. Inaction, no falsifying dream. Between my hooked head and hooked feet, or in a sleep rehearse perfect kills and eat. The convenience of the high trees, the air's buoyancy and the sun's ray are of advantage to me, and the earth's face upward for my inspection. My feet are locked upon the rough bark. It took the whole of creation to produce my foot, my each feather. Now I hold creation in my foot. Or fly up and revolve it all slowly. I kill where I please because it is all mine. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads. The allotment of death. For the one path of my flight is direct, through the bones of the living. No arguments assert my right. The sun is behind me. Nothing has changed since I began. My eye has permitted no change. I'm going to keep things like this. What struck me first about this free verse poem was the perspective of the speaker. It is rare we hear from an animal, let alone an animal talking to itself. Hughes is personifying the hawk, providing a comparison between the human tendency of speaking to oneself. The hawk begins to describe his mannerisms in a realistic way that shed light on his power over others in the natural world. The hawk begins resting in his lofty position, asserting his physical superiority. Hughes is not afraid of using realistic imagery to describe the tearing of heads and the bones of the living. He makes clear the directness of this hawk's path and his tendency to do as he pleases. After all, this provides realism to the identity of a true animal. This language may make some readers turned off, but I found it to be realistic of a hawk if he were ever truly reflecting on his natural ways. The assumed ignorance and violence of the hawk causes some readers to compare the hawk with humans, with themselves. Hughes, however, denied intending to parallel the life of the hawk with that of a human, rather wishing to display the essence of this dominant creature. As the hawk speaks about the earth, the sun, the trees, and the air, he shows how they all aid him in a successful journey to control not only the animals, but the land they inhabit. Nothing stands in his way. To me, the most interesting aspect of this piece was the symbol of creation. The hawk suggests that he was a product of creation, but now in all his superiority, he holds creation in his hooked foot. This commentary reminds readers of the true survival of the wild, even suggesting a simplicity in natural dominance. The poem ends as the hawk states that nothing has changed, and that although his lifestyle may be violent, it does not oppose his need to maintain superiority. The hawk only knows his life in this way, and to disturb it would be to disturb natural order. While the poem may speak about violence, I found that it almost created an honest and real identity symbolizing the hawk. In the end, Hughes is personifying the hawk following his typical style, straying from sentiment and rather focusing on the reality of what it takes to achieve dominance. I hope you enjoyed this episode of my podcast. Tune in next week.